There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. I am your host, Morris. Now Kyle messed me up. I'm your host, Morris, and I want you all to stay in the pocket. Just stay in the pocket. Thing is that Kyle has no idea what that means, but he will tonight because he's finally going to go see Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which we're going to talk about today, but we're not going to talk about it just yet because Kyle hasn't seen it yet. So what we're going to do today is a little different. I'm going to hit some news. There's a couple news stories I want to cover. Then we'll do our break. And after the break, we'll spend the whole time on Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings so that Kyle can go and take his headset off and, not have any spoilers. So we're going to kick it off with some news. First thing I wanted to talk about, though, was last night we got a new episode of Marvel's What If. It is What If Killmonger saved Tony Stark. And I'm going to do a whole thing on it tomorrow. That'll be tomorrow's episode. And remember, tomorrow's episode is at this time. We're not doing the later show on Thursdays anymore. We're moving it up to this time. So whether it's 5 p.m. where you are or 2 p.m. where you are, this is going to be the regular time for the Dan Wickline Show whenever we're on. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. You can figure out the times in between. I've never been good with that. Now, the episode, it's probably the first meh episode I've come across. And it's not that it's a bad episode. It's just meh. It was like, okay. And it was neat seeing Chadwick Boseman's voice back. It was neat having a lot of the actors that came back, including Michael B. Jordan. It just, with the last few episodes, with how intense they've been, this was really just kind of a meh episode. I don't know why, and from what I understand, they've actually done some flipping around. The word is, and I don't know how true this is that the Marvel Zombies episode was going to be the 7th episode, and Party Thor was going to be 5th, but they flipped them because they thought the zombie episode would get more people's attention. And maybe the numbers haven't been quite what they wanted them to be, but Morris Day minus the time. Jungle Love. Oh, wee, oh, wee, oh. Girl, I want to know you. Yeah. All right, that's about as much Morris Day you're going to get from me. All right. So tomorrow we'll be talking about that, and I want to go ahead and give a heads up for next week's show. On Tuesday, I am going to be sitting down with Image co-founder, creator of Shadowhawk, head of Shadowline Studios from Image, the guy that put Guardians of the Galaxy on the map for Marvel for a long time. Really a great guy. Jim Valentino is going to be here on Tuesday. Now, we're probably going to do it recorded and air it Tuesday, but it'll air for the first time Tuesday. So tune in on Tuesday for my interview with Jim Valentino. All right, let's go ahead and get into the news, and that's going to be here. Kicking it off, we have got news that Disney has greenlit a female-led reimagining of the 1986 kids sci-fi adventure Flight of the Navigator. Now, the series will be directed and produced by Bryce Dallas Howard, who has worked with Disney in the recent years on 2 episodes of The Mandalorian, and also she is directing one of the episodes of Book of Boba Fett. Now, these are the first real directing that she's done for television. Most everything else she's directed prior to that have been short stories and stuff, or short video shorts and stuff. So The Mandalorian really got our attention. She did a great job on her 2 episodes of Mandalorian. I'm looking forward to Book of Boba Fett. So she is not only directing, but she's producing their reimagining of Flight of the Navigator. Now, the basic plot of the original film, if you haven't seen it, is about a 12-year-old boy who disappears, only to reappear 8 years later, still at the same age and with no memory of his time away. Now, NASA makes a connection between the boy's disappearance and reappearance and a recovered UFO. And the whole film is basically about the boy trying to unravel this intergalactic mystery, all while reuniting with his family that has moved on for 8 years when he hasn't. So it should be a pretty interesting take on it. I got a lot of faith in Bryce Dallas Howard after seeing what she's done with the Mandalorian and stuff like that. So this could be good. It'll be on Disney Plus, so we'll have to keep an eye out for it. All right, we're going to move on to news coming out of where is it? Screen Rant. Now, we've been getting a lot of rumors about Marvel Netflix characters popping up in the MCU, including speculation about Jessica Jones may return in the upcoming She-Hulk series on Disney Plus. Now, Marvel Studios has not confirmed any of it. Okay, nothing about Daredevil in Spider-Man or Matt Murdock in Charlie Cox. Nothing about Vincent D'Onofrio coming back. This is all just speculation and rumor. The only thing even close to it is Kevin Feige says that he really liked the work of Charlie Cox, Kristen Ritter, Vincent D'Onofrio, and John Bernthal on the Netflix series. Other than that, they've pretty much treated those series, along with like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, as non-canon now. So it's kind of weird. You don't really know. I mean, there's a lot of talk of them coming back, and I think a lot of people love those series, or most of those series, so they want it to come back, but I don't know how much of this is fans putting out in the ether and how much of it is legit. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But Ritter, for her part, told Screen Rant, quote, "I would absolutely just die to play Jessica Jones again. I had the best time doing it, and I just love her so much. I'm so proud of that character, not only because it was like a great role, and she is such a badass, but the character has really resonated with people in ways that I don't know who else has. Really, really resonated with women and girls, trauma survivors. It's just so big and such a thing I'm so grateful to have been part of. So if there's ever an opportunity for me to put on those boots, I will be there in a flash." So Ritter is currently appearing in the Night Books on Netflix, and she just signed on, or it just came out today that she's signed on to the HBO Max True Crime limited series Love and Death. So with it being a limited series, it means she's probably still available for Marvel if they need her. So I will be there in a flash, she said. All right, let's continue with Marvel. And they're really good at keeping secrets. And I think part of it is because they don't let the actors know what's going on. Total Film was talking to Kit Harington about his upcoming turn as Dane Whitman in Internals. Now, the actor admitted he doesn't know what is going to happen going forward, or if his character of Dane Whitman will ever take on the role of the Black Knight as he is in the comics. Now, Harington said, I've got no idea whether my character goes on or not. I had read up on who he could be or might be, so there's the possibility for a longer trajectory, and hopefully, I think this is the tip of the iceberg for the character, I hope. But I just don't know, you know. I'm as in the dark as anyone else, and I try not to live too far ahead in the future with anything. Even when I was in Game of Thrones, even on the 6th season, I presumed the 7th season wasn't going to happen. So we speculate a lot that Dane Whitman or Black Knight is going to be part of the next Avengers group, and maybe Cersei as well, and all of that. But the truth is, we don't know. He doesn't know. They're keeping all that pretty close to the vest, and you know what? Good. I think it's good to still have surprises and stuff. You know, we get a lot of leaks on these things, and some of them we don't really need to know. So I like the fact that they're able to keep good secrets, and I'd like to see some other studios being able to do that too. You know. All right, one other story for the day, and this one's kind of close to my heart because it's a comic series that I really love and I've been reading for a long time. And if you can't get enough superheroes, but you want one from maybe outside of the Marvel and DC, well, you're in luck. Netflix has given an 8-episode series order to Matt Wagner's Grendel. Now, this award-winning Dark Horse comic series, and it wasn't always with Dark Horse, but it's been with Dark Horse most recently. The series follows Hunter Rose. He's a fencer and a writer and an assassin, and he seeks revenge for the death of his lost love. He goes to war with New York's criminal underworld, only to realize that the best way to beat them is to join them. Now, the series will star Katie Keene actor, and I'm going to do my best on this name, Abu Bakr Ali as Hunter, Jamie Ray Newsom as Jocasta Rose, Julian Black Antelope as Argent, who's kind of the big bad in the series, Madeline Zima, who used to be on Californication, as Liz Sparks, Kevin Corrigan as Barry Palumbo, Emma Ho as his daughter Stacy Palumbo, Eric Palladino as Teddy Ciccone, Brittany Allen as Annabelle Wright, and Andy Mentis, who played Pied Piper on The Flash, as Larry Stoller. Now, creator Matt Wagner said about this, I couldn't be more thrilled about the Grendel Saga, one of the longest-running independent comic series, finally being translated into live action for the screen. Under the sharp guidance of showrunner Andrew Dabb, our incredible creative team, sure to be stellar cast, and Dark Horse Entertainment have teamed with Netflix to produce this provocative adaptation that will bring my character and concept to an all-new audience, and yet still provide excitement and surprises for die-hard fans. I'm especially excited to see Abubakar Ali bring the character of Grendel Hunter Rose to life. He has the charisma, style, and vital edginess that I've been envisioning in the role for years. Now, if you're not a reader of Grendel, it's interesting because Hunter Rose is the original Grendel, and that's, of course, a great place to start. But over the years, different people have taken up the mantle. There was Christine, when I first started reading it, it was Christine Spar had taken over, and this was Wagner working with the Pander brothers. They've done a lot of different ones. There's a post-apocalyptic version of Grendel. It's a lot of great stuff. So JD says, Grendel is such a damn good series. It's constantly evolving, pushing boundaries, looking forward, never back. Fantastic series all throughout. I could not agree with you more, JD. That is Dead on. I like that. Yeah, that's definitely a fan of the Grendel series, and I am happy that Matt Wagner is getting that produced. Hopefully this will do well. We'll get multiple seasons, and then we'll get a Mage series as well from Matt. Okay, now let's, before we go on, I want to point out that right up after today's show is going to be Comics Collectibles with the Not Nicks. And there's a couple interesting books on there. They're kind of getting ready. This week is Saturday is going to be Batman Day, so they're getting ready with some Batman-related books today. I know one of them on there is a sketch cover that of Batman Beyond that was remarked and signed by Ken Hazer, and also signed by Dan Jurgens, the writer of that particular book. So some good stuff looking up on their show. After that, then you have Kicking It with Henri and Kevin. So that's our lineup for the rest of today. Please stick around for that. And as I said earlier, in case you missed it, we are going to go into the break early, come back and spend the rest of the day talking about Shang-Chi so that Kyle... Go ahead.
To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop today. Visit ComicShopLocator.com today.
All right, Kyle, before you run off, run the spoiler warning and put the banner up, please. All right, now Kyle can go away, and we are going to talk Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This little guy right here. Yep. Now, I want to be honest going into this. If you would have asked me which Marvel characters were going to get a movie, even just a couple years ago, well, during phase 2, I guess would be a good way to put it, I don't think Shang-Chi would have come up on my list. And it's not because I don't think he's a good character. I think he's a great character. I just didn't think that he was, what's a good way to put it? A real draw, you know? I mean, he had the great run of comics in the 70s and the 80s, but he hasn't really caught on since. There's a great run right now going on that I'm enjoying, but overall, he pops up occasionally, and he kind of has played second fiddle to Iron Fist for a long time as the martial arts character in the Marvel Universe. Now, I'm not saying that if you're a fan of Shang-Chi, that Iron Fist is better than Shang-Chi or Shang-Chi is better than Iron Fist. I think both characters are great, and I really enjoy them. And I'd like to see both of them get more prominence in the films and stuff. That said, I just didn't see this as being where Marvel was going to, stake their tent. But then I didn't see Eternals as being it either. I figured they've got so many other characters and teams and stuff that they could go through, that to go with a major motion picture of Shang-Chi was a little surprising. That said, I totally get it now, because the trick to Marvel has been and continues to be never do the same thing. You look at each one of the Marvel franchises, which in the big overall arcing MCU, and you realize that each one is completely different from the others. You get Captain America, the first Avengers, is a war movie. Then the second one, Winter Soldier, is kind of a 70s spy thriller. Iron Man is kind of a sci-fi tech story, but it's also a redemption story. Thor is much more high fantasy, at least in the first one, where it changes by the time it gets to the third one. The Hulk was a little bit more horror in the way they filmed some of the early scenes. And then you get to the later movies. Shang-Chi is kind of a wushu martial arts mixed with more grounded martial arts movie. And I'm completely fascinated by that. And I think that's part of what I really like about this, is that it's not just one. It's not just a wushu movie. It's not just Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or anything like that, or Hero. It's got those elements, but we get into those elements. And in a way, it's interesting because Marvel has always been very grounded in the way they treat their characters. They try to downplay magic as, well, it's just science that you haven't figured out yet. That the line from Thor. So how they did this movie is absolutely fascinating to me, because they start off with a very grounded martial arts movie. You don't get the big fantasy stuff. You get a fight scene on a bus with a bunch of just straightforward fighters. And that goes that way for a while, and he's kicking everybody kicking around. And you get this martial arts kung fu hustle fight going on. And then they introduce Razor Fist. And you go, wait, but it's just a little bit. He's not both hands, it's just one hand. He's chopping things up. But it's keeping that grounded feel. It's like, oh, okay, we got it now. All right. And it keeps that through to the big match. And then the whole fight scene on the bamboo scaffolding, all of that is kept in reality. Now, they gave us the flashback to Wenwu getting the rings and then fighting for entrance to Tao Lo, which he fails to get. So they give us a little bit of the wushu in the beginning, but as the movie drifts, as we move along, the fantasy picks up. So it's almost like they go, okay, look, we know you're used to a grounded universe. And we did this with Doctor Strange, too. We gave him a doctor's thing, and we put him through a car accident, and we moved you along. And then we had him being skeptical about magic, just like you would be, and then learn. So you come along that way. Well, this one does it similar in that we're not following along as Shang-Chi is learning about this, because he's been trained for years, but the future, so they pull us through the grounded, start giving it a little more of the fantasy. So by the time we get to the base for the 10 rings, and we see the floating water thing around, we're like, oh, okay, this is getting a little weird, but I'm still with you. I'm good with you. And then they give us Morris, which is another great way to do that, because instead of us just ending up in Talo with all these magical creatures and food dragons and nine-tailed foxes and the flame birds, and I know there's actual names for all these things, but my point being, they gave us Morris to tell us this is going to get weird now. And the fact that Shang-Chi and Katie freaked out at seeing it allowed us to go, oh, okay. And how Trevor just went, oh, Morris, you're real. This is awesome. Again, this was just so well crafted to bring the audience along. Because if you think about it, we start off with him parking cars in San Francisco, and we end with him riding a dragon. That's a huge arc to get through, to bring your audience with you. And they did it remarkably well, because they did it at this slow pace, and they kept giving us those grounded moments as well, as they also gave us a bunch of MCU moments. I mean, there weren't a lot of them, but just enough that we remembered we were in the MCU, but not so much that it felt like every other MCU, because none of them feel the exact same. This felt like a Shang-Chi movie, and then every once in a while there's the poster for Blip Sync, so that you could date people who've been blipped, and the fight between Wong and the Abomination. Great reminder, yes, we're in the MCU. Or an even more subtle one was the fight between what John calls Helen and the soldier, which was one of the Black Widows that Natasha rescued. I mean, she was in the Black Widow movie, versus one of the Extremis soldiers from Iron Man 3. So there was a nice little connection to that in just a walk by. And we get a lot of that in the movie, those little connections, without it being beaten over the head. You know, because if you didn't see Black Widow and Iron Man, those just look like two fighters that maybe had some interesting abilities. Next thing we see Abomination trying to punch Wong and his hand going through a portal and punching himself. Well, some of the people in this fight have unique abilities. We get that now. They establish it and then grow from it, you know? So I think that's really a clever way of doing it. And it's just how well the movie was written, that it took us from that grounded place to the full-on fantasy finale of Shang-Chi and his sister on the back of a dragon fighting the Dweller of Darkness, a character that Lovecraft would have been proud to create, you know? So that's an interesting arc and really well done. The fight scenes, I think, were fantastic. The bus fight scene was really good. The fight on the bamboo scaffolding was amazing. I mean, that one, I started getting a little, oh, hang on, oh, you know, you get into it, and they're over this city on these scaffolding things, and yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, and I think it was Jackie Chan who did a similar scene, and there's a lot of little nods to stuff like Jackie Chan. There's a move Shang-Chi does on the bus with his jacket, which is almost identical to a move Jackie Chan did in one of his movies. And of course, Brad Allen was the stunt coordinator for this. And sadly, he passed away shortly after the film was made. But he came out of Jackie Chan's group, out of his little troupe of performers and stuntmen and stuff. So he brought that to the MCU. And I'm hoping that they keep that as part, because there's going to be a Shang-Chi too. It just makes sense. I mean, there are some issues behind the scenes right now with the film getting into China. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but there are some past comments by Simulu when he was speaking about his parents' thoughts on China. You know, his parents come from China, but emigrated here to Canada, and he grew up in Canada. So he was relaying some of their thoughts on China, and they weren't flattering to China. And of course, China doesn't have a real good policy about that. You know, if somebody speaks badly about them, they don't let their movies be played. So, but that's not official yet. It's speculation right now. People think that's going to happen, but Shang-Chi has not been blacklisted from China. Just like Eternals has a chance of that happening too because of Chloe Zhao. But you got to hope that it gets in there, because again, that's like another $250 million for the movie. But also, I would like to not see Disney react by doing something like, well, let's bring down Shang-Chi's profile. Let's not put him in the Avengers or something like that. Because I'd like to see more Shang-Chi, and I'd like to see him interact more with the rest of the characters in the Marvel Universe. I thought his interactions with Wong and Banner and stuff at the end were great. I like this director, so I'd like to see this carry forward. I very much would like to see Shang-Chi team up with Iron Fist. I think that would be an awesome movie. I'd love to see the second movie be the Tournament of the Heavenly Cities. So we get Iron Fist, we get Shang-Chi in the tournament. I think that would be great. And then a bunch of other fighters. We could bring in some of the Ten Rings, some of the Hand. I mean, I think that would be awesome. I would love to see them go in that direction with the second one. But all right, let's talk a bit about the handling of the Mandarin. Now, the Mandarin, of course, is to Iron Man what Doctor Doom is to the Fantastic Four, what the Red Skull is to Captain America, what the Joker is to Batman. He's kind of Iron Man's big bad. There really isn't another one on that level. We've seen Ironmonger, we've seen Whiplash, there's Crimson Dynamo. The Ghost is an Iron Man villain, even though she showed up in Ant-Man. There's a good number of Iron Man villains. He's got an interesting rogue gallery. Black Knight was actually an Iron Man villain before becoming a hero. Different person in the suit, but related. But the Mandarin has always been the big bad for Iron Man. So when they handled it the way they did, it upset a lot of fans. And I get that. I wasn't as upset, but I also didn't love it. But what's interesting now, I think I like it more knowing what they do down the line. You know, the whole idea was the Mandarin had retired to raise his kids. We learned this in the movie. And stepped away, and the 10 rings, which is actually like 10 separate 10 separate little terrorist cells that all answer to the Mandarin. Well, he kind of let them go do their own thing. And in doing so, it left this power vacuum. Well, when Killian came along, he didn't necessarily want to fund a terrorist, because his goal was, or he had his goals, it wasn't to strengthen a terrorist organization. So when he did that, he took the name the Ten Rings, or he kind of borrowed the idea of the Ten Rings and stuff, but he didn't know the leader's name because the leader was quiet at that point. Names are powerful, so he wasn't, it wasn't common knowledge. And Killian just created the name the Mandarin. And I could see that being a crafted thing by a PR type move, and he hires Trevor Slattery to play the role. That works a lot better for me now knowing that Wenwu was real and powerful and been around for all these centuries and stuff, and that they were working from an existing legend. So that works a lot better for me. I'm a little fuzzy on the timeline, though, because in the film, when Killian comes into play, the Mandarin should already, or Wenwu should already have been back in charge. Because the film takes place 10 years. So if the film took place in 2023, when Shang-Chi had been around in 10 years, so that takes it to 2013. No, it's this. Well, supposedly, I've heard two reports on this, and this is where I get confused. That Wenwu wasn't in charge when the Ten Rings went after Tony Stark, and then today I've heard a report that actually Wenwu was in charge. So if he was in charge, that means he was already back in control. And that makes sense time-wise because Shang-Chi left for 10 years, so 23 to 2013. And when his mom was killed, he was 16 when he ran away, and his mom killed, he looked like he was maybe 9 or 10. So it does seem like that was around the same time. And it makes sense that Wenwu would want to get weaponry and stuff as he get back over, so he wanted a Jericho missile system from Tony Stark, or that type of thing makes sense, and it fits the timeline. But then Killian comes in after the Battle of New York. So, and he's acting like there isn't the head of the Ten Rings. That's why he creates, gets Trevor Slattery and creates the name the Mandarin. So there's a kind of a conflict there, but that's sort of how they're putting it out there, is that, Killian just appropriated the role the Mandarin, or that Wenwu was playing, and called him the Mandarin and put Tony Slattery in the slot. And that's kind of how it worked out. Now, I think that connects us back to Wenwu very well, but it also kind of takes care of some of the problematic aspects of the Mandarin, in that originally Shang-Chi was connected to Fu Manchu, which was a very racist character having to do with the Yellow Peril. And Marvel had the character for a while, then lost it, and they had to replace him. And now MCU comes along, they're going to use Mandarin instead. But the problem is the Mandarin was also kind of a Yellow Peril villain. Yellow Peril basically being the reason that he's a bad guy is because he's Asian. Yeah, there was a time when that was all it needed, was, TV and movies were that badly racist that they just went, oh, well, he's Asian, so he's a bad guy. Thankfully, we're not there anymore. We've evolved some. So, but there's still that trope out there that some of the old comics have to get over. And I think they did that well by not only making the characters detached from the Mandarin name, but also giving him this very three-dimensional background, the love story, the fact that you can understand where he's coming from. Wenwu is probably one of the top 5 villains in the Marvel Universe. He's got depth, he's got heart, you understand where he's coming from. If you loved someone so much, you were willing to give up these 10 rings of power and put them away and walk away from your empire for love and to raise your children. And then when she's murdered, you put it all back on. And because of how much grief you're having, it is completely believable that if you heard her voice saying, "Help me, I'm trapped behind a door in a mystical city, and only you can break me out so our family can be back together," that he's going to buy it. You know, he's running around with these mystical power bands or rings. Why wouldn't he buy that? And that's been the one critique I've had some people say about the character. And I disagree. I think I totally get where he's coming from and I can understand it. And I think Tony Leung, my God, what a good job on that role. Just phenomenal. I am not that familiar with his acting. I'm much more familiar with Michelle Yeoh, having seen a bunch of stuff that she's in. But I'm going to go back and look at some of the Tony Leung stuff because the guy is just phenomenal. Every time he was on screen, that's where I paid attention, you know? And yeah, that character was handled really well, and they had to, because it was a very delicate character to deal with. So they did a really good job with that. Shifting over to Simulu and Aquafina. And this may be one of my favorite pairings in the Marvel Universe now. The interaction between these two. I love the fact that they get it out of the way in the very beginning that these two are not romantic. They're not supposed to be romantic. They are friends, and they are friends till the end. This is Cap and Bucky. This is Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes. They are friends. There's no romance between them. Nothing. These are just close friends. They've been friends for 10 years. And if he's in danger, she's going to be by his side, and vice versa. He's been hiding his abilities for 10 years to stay away from his father. But and he's not jumping at anybody until Katie gets hurt. And then it's all bets are off. You know? But it's not a romantic connection. It's a friendship connection. And I love that in the MCU, because the MCU is not great at romance. They're better when they take it over to Disney Plus and try to do it. But there hasn't been a lot of great romance in the MCU. We've been paid lip service. We get, MJ and Peter. We got Pepper and Tony, Aunt May and Happy. But none of them really feel, they don't earn those. They're just we're told about them. This one, so there's already a big love story in this, and that's Wenwu and Lee. So I think that they made the right choice in just keeping them friends. That said, just love their relationship, love their interaction, love that she spent time berating him for choosing the name Sean when he went into hiding, as opposed to his name Shang. That was one of my favorite scenes. I thought that was great. I think Simulu is just great as Shang-Chi. His fighting and stuff is incredibly believable, but at the same time, he's very personable, and he can definitely act and pull off the heart of the character, which that's the tough part with some of these roles, when you get someone who is supposed to fight really well. you know, is that sometimes you sacrifice the acting ability for the fighting ability or vice versa. You don't here. He looks like he can kick some serious ass, and he delivers the part really well. The next character that really stood out to me is Ben Kingsley's. Bringing Trevor Slattery back, I thought that was absolutely fascinating. I mean, it could have been a throwaway line. He could have been locked in a dungeon and just a quick reference. But to make him an integral part of the movie, to have him tied to Morris and therefore to Tao Lo, and to go to Tao Lo and do the whole playing dead, he was just, it was great. And I'm usually not big on comic relief characters, especially when you've got someone like Aquafina who felt like going into the movie she was going to be the comic relief character. You got Ronnie Chen from The Daily Show playing John John, and then you throw in Trevor Slattery's character. It could have just been silly on top of silly on top of silly and really taken us out of the movie. And instead, I think each character worked really well. You know, you could see John John as being the public face of the Fight Club. You could see, you know, Katie's awkwardness and her humor and stuff being this great relationship with Shang-Chi, but also believable that she would come along on this trip. Though the one question I don't have the answer to is, how do two people who park cars for a living can suddenly afford a trip to, I don't remember where the Fight Club was. But you get the idea that they could suddenly afford an international flight. And they already have their passports ready to go. Kind of interesting for two people who just live in San Francisco. Now, the rest of the cast, I have to pull up some names. Michelle Yeoh, I really liked Michelle Yeoh. And I kind of hoped they would have given her a little more. But as Ying Nan, she was great. Meng'er Zhang was terrific as Xialing. I thought just believable, but at the end you also get the feeling that kind of a threat, you know? Fala Chen as Li, I thought that fight scene in the beginning, that was kind of a courtship fight, that was amazing. That was wushu at its best. Florian Montno as Razor Fist, I thought he did a better job than I expected. Going into the movie, I thought he was just going to be like the hired help, you know, the henchman type. And instead, he turned out to be really good, and I could see some depth to the character. And I'd like to see him continue too. I'd like to make sure that character comes back. And we see now he's working for Xialing, so along with John John, that'll be interesting to see them come back. I thought Death Dealer was a little bit of a waste. We have the mask on there, and I realize the character has the mask in the comics, but we don't really find out why they're wearing the mask, other than maybe an intimidation thing. But I thought Andy Lee did a great job at the movements and stuff. Master Guangbo, Hua Yen, he was terrific, giving Katie the little advice and teaching her how to shoot the bow. So I really liked everybody in this movie. They were really strong characters. Even the kids, the younger versions of Shang-Chi, and the Jaden Zhang, who played the young Shang-Chi, Arnold Sun, who played the teenage Shang-Chi, and then Elodie Fong, who played the young Xialing. They were all terrific, you know. Usually you bring in the younger actors and stuff. Sometimes they just can't keep on the same level as the actors around them. You get kind of maybe one in every three is good. But, yeah, all of them were really good. I I liked how they handled the mystical elements of this. Morris was terrific. I love the fact that they dealt with the name Razor Fist by never saying it, but putting it on a license plate and painting it on a car, and then having him, of course, go, "My car." And I that right there is a great way to get around the fact that some of these characters have horrible names, and they like to dance around it. I mean, Scarlet Witch, we took forever to get to her in the series when Wanda's been around for a long time and never had a code name. Things like that. So the fact that they did it this way was really unique and really fun. And the scene where they're driving through the forest with Morris, Morris was a show stealer, but the whole stay in the pocket thing kept reminding me of the episode of Friends where they're trying to move the couch and Ross just keeps yelling pivot. It's like, "You're not helping." But the end credit scenes, I think the Wong bringing them to the Sanctum, having them meet with Captain Marvel and Bruce Banner, it's a great way to deal with the fact that we still don't know anything about the rings. So having them do that scene is really great. Having them connect to Wong and even do the karaoke scene with him, I think that establishes him a little more in the MCU, which, again, is awesome because I think the characters I'm hoping is going to be a big part of Marvel going forward. But I know they picked Captain Marvel because Brie Larson has worked before with Destin Daniel, what's his last name? Cretton. Destin Daniel Cretton. They've worked together in the past, and he requested, he's like, "Well, if I'm getting an Avenger, I'd like Brie Larson because we've worked together before." And then they get Bruce Banner, who I think is actually setting up the fact that he's going to be Bruce Banner and not Professor Hulk, because they need that for She-Hulk. So when they do a blood transfusion, he's not big, green, and impossible to get a needle in. So I think they're just setting up She-Hulk series with that move. They do set up a sequel with the fact that we don't know who the bands have contacted. And that's a complete different take. I mean, in the comics, the rings were from an alien race called the McLuhan, who were giant dragon-like creatures or shapeshifters who look like dragons. And that's where Fing Fang Foom comes from. So we got a dragon in this, but it's not Fing Fang Foom. It's a Chinese-style dragon where Fing Fang Foom not only has like limbs but pants, like little purple shorts. What were they thinking in the 60s? Abomination got shorts, Hulk got shorts. Just no dongles in the MCU, I guess. Well, so that's... I think the end credit scene is nice setup going forward, but that might also be part of a different answer, a different part that might be Fantastic Four or Avengers stuff, where I like I said, I'd love to see him maybe focus with more of the martial arts characters, bring in some of the other ones like Iron Fist, Elektra, stuff like that going forward in his corner of the universe. I think that would be great. So that's my thought there. I think Shang-Chi, and I mentioned this once before, is part of the move to go from Tony Stark as being the center of the MCU to Stephen Strange being the center of the MCU, and the move from more scientific to more mystical, why the movie shifts that way too, why it cleans up Iron Man 3 stuff, and it takes an Iron Man villain and shifts him to more of a mystical villain or a Doctor Strange style villain with Wenwu. I think that's what this movie was meant to do, was to help shift everything over to a Doctor Strange centric or Stephen Strange centric Marvel universe rather than the Tony Stark one that we had in the first three. So maybe the next three are all Stephen Strange centric, and then we move on from that. We go on to whoever will be after that. Who knows? At that point, could be anybody. We could be looking at the Young Avengers, and it's a Wiccan centric, or it's a Hulkling centric, or who knows. But the movie was a lot of fun. I had an absolute blast. I'm going to go see it again on Saturday. Kyle is going to see it tonight. By the way, Kyle, you can come back. And yeah, no, let me tell him he can come back. And okay, so we're going to be wrapping this up pretty quick. But Shang-Chi was absolutely terrific. I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are in the comments below. Please add those. Hit the like and subscribe buttons. Please, please, please. We're still trying to build up the YouTube channel to get us to 1,000 subscribers, so we can get some more tools and stuff that YouTube gives you at 1,000 subscribers. So Kyle's back now. After this show, Comic Collectibles with the Not Nicks, followed by Kicking It with Henri and Kevin. So you'll want to stick around for that. Thank you all for tuning in. Remember, tomorrow I will be back at the 5 p.m. Eastern time slot, 2 p.m. Pacific, to break down Marvel's What If Killmonger saved Tony Stark. And then on Tuesday, we'll be back at the same time with an interview with Image co-creator and creator of Shadowhawk, Jim Valentino. So Kyle, did you have a good time while you were away? Did you get some rest? Maybe a little nap in while I was talking? Ate dinner. Good choice. Yeah, I'll be doing that in a little bit too. Luckily, it's only 3 o'clock here, and I won't be cooking dinner till 5. But all right, guys, that is going to be it for now. Stick around for the collectibles with Rex and the Not Nicks, and I will see you all tomorrow. Good night, and Kyle, have a great time with Shang-Chi. Good night.